more information, please go to www.telview.com.
The following program was produced by Community Producer. The content, views, and opinions expressed are the sole responsibility of the Community Producer and do not reflect Malden Access Television, the City of Malden, or your cable provider. MATV welcomes your comments. Call us at 781-321-6400 or email us at access@matv.org.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kevin Jarvis, and I'm the Director of Veteran Services for the City of Malden. And welcome to the Moving Wall Vietnam Veterans Memorial Dedication Ceremony. You're looking at a half-size replica of the Vietnam Memorial that stands in Washington, D.C., an exact half-size replica. It has over 58,000 names of Americans who died in Vietnam. This display will remain here for viewing for all Americans from Malden throughout the state of Massachusetts and other states until Monday afternoon. So we're getting a little rain out today, maybe tomorrow morning, but then I think Saturday night, Sunday, and Monday will be good. So feel free to come back. And during the night, it's on display for 24 hours. We have lights set up here and security on the clock. Thank you for coming. Jim Nestor initiated this wall coming to Malden in 2010 when I started working for the city again after about a 35-year layoff. I worked back in high school for the Central Kitchen, if you remember, in the early 70s. I am also a Vietnam-era veteran. I first joined the Marine Corps in November of 1972. I did not get to Vietnam. I kind of felt gypped at the time, but I don't anymore. But I want to thank all of you that did go. At this time, I'm going to have the presentation of colors. The Malden Police Department, the U.S. Veterans Clubs of Malden, VFW, Veterans of Foreign Wars, American Legion, Disabled American Veterans, Joint Honor Guard. Please present colors, post colors at this time. Please stand, ladies and gentlemen.
Two, halt, lift, reach.
At this time, I'd like the Boy Scouts to come up to the podium and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please, halt.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Malden High School student Corey Malone, who will come up to sing our national anthem. Microphone's working today, Corey.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose voice rise and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, save us that star-spangled banner yet wave, for the land of the brave and the home of the brave.
Doesn't get much better than that, does it? Thank you, Corey. That was great. At this time, we're going to have the invocation, which will be given by Father Daniel Hickey of Sacred Heart Church, Malden, Mass. Father Hickey was a chaplain, and he served in Vietnam, and he was assigned to the U.S. Marine Corps. Father Hickey graduated from St. John's Seminary in 1959. He was ordained the same year. He came to Malden to serve as pastor of Sacred Heart Church in January of 1985. Father Dan proudly served his country as a U.S. Navy chaplain, ministering to U.S. Marines and naval personnel, as well as other servicemen on the battlefields of Vietnam. Father Hickey came to Malden to serve the city of Malden as the pastor of Sacred Heart Church in January of 1985, where he's been a fixture of faith for 25 years. And he still serves his veterans and also a large Vietnamese American population. Father Hickey.
Heavenly Father, reverently we come together this morning to memorize all those Malden, Vietnam, who served their country in the armed forces, defending the gifts of freedom and liberty so dear to our country and the way of life. We give thanks for the sacrifices they made and pledge ourselves to preserve the freedom they defended even to the ultimate sacrifice of their lives. May we never forget what they have done, and may we always hold sacred their memory now and forever. Amen.
Thank you, Father Dan. Please be seated, please. Since it's raining, if the honor guard would like to come under the tent on the sides and maybe hold the flags outside so you're not in the rain, that'll be fine. I'll leave it up to you. A brief history of the moving wall. This is a monument that represents what cost Americans have paid for answering their country's call to duty. The Vietnam War was fought from the mid-1950s to the mid-1970s, almost 20 years. During the initial phase of the war, the U.S. basically went on to support the South Vietnamese government, who was under siege from communist North Vietnam. Eventually, in 1973, a peace agreement was put into place and withdrawal of Americans followed. But we still had American servicemen in Vietnam until April 30th of 1975. Today, Vietnam is a relatively quiet and peaceful area. Many Americans go back there and visit places where they may have participated in battles. Vietnam veterans will return to Vietnam to help, because they return, it helps them heal old wounds and finally face and deal with the nightmares that have been a result of fighting so many years ago. This is not just a monument, but for many who visit it, a very poignant experience. It reminds of what war can do to a country, especially when, in this case, the tragic loss of over 58,000 young men and women who died in that war. A young woman named Maya Lim designed the original wall in Washington, D.C., which is now recognized world over by its architectural success. Although at one point there was some doubt that the architectural success would even occur. Millions of Americans visit the Vietnam Memorial Wall every year, and has been purported to be one of the most visited of the monuments in Washington, D.C. The moving wall was constructed in 1984. This replica, half-size replica. And that was only 2 years after the original wall was dedicated in Washington. Many American veterans came back from fighting this war. They were not greeted by ticker-tape parades. No cheering crowds. That was done in previous wars. And they weren't even welcomed by some of the veterans organizations. At the airports, we wouldn't even wear our uniforms. They knew when we come off the plane if we were in the Marines or the military, because everybody had long hair in those days, unlike today. So it was pretty bad when we were told not to wear uniforms, but then they brought attention. And I wasn't even over there, so I can't even imagine. I can't imagine what a lot of you guys went through. How many veterans are here with us today? How many Vietnam-era veterans? Army? Navy? Marine Corps? Air Force? Coast Guard? There's someone out there, I'm sure. People from all branches of the service are on this wall, including 8 women. There weren't that many women in Vietnam, and those that were there, as you all know, worked as nurses and in mostly administrative positions. Now they're dying and fighting on the battlefields around the world. At this time, I'd like to introduce the president of the Malden City Council, a Navy veteran of the Vietnam era. I'm just going to say Vietnam War because I'm tired of saying era. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Bill Anderson.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and good morning to you all. Before I begin, I'd just like to acknowledge some of my colleagues in elective government that are here today to take the time out of their busy schedule to be here with us. I want to recognize, and I think he's already been mentioned, Jim Nestor, the City Council of Ward 4. Jim is standing right over here. Councilor from Ward 5. Remember, I can never get these numbers right. Barbara lives right, her house abuts the cemetery, so she didn't have a long way to get here. She was one of the earlier ones here. Barbara Murphy, Councilor from Ward 5. Councilor John Matheson, right here in the front row. I see Representative Donato, who's right here in the audience. It's important that we point out the elected officials that come out to these ceremonies and how important it is that they take time out of their busy schedules to be here today. So it's really an honor and a privilege. I'm grateful to be here today to celebrate the memory of Malden's 18 men who were lost in Vietnam, and the memory of all the men and women who paid the ultimate price protecting democracy. For those of us old enough to remember the American climate at the time the Vietnam War ended, we know firsthand that it was a dark period in our nation's history. When we came home from battle, many of our troops were broken, battered, emotionally weak, and even drug addicted. For us, there was no rendition of Hail to the Conquering Heroes. There were no ticket tape parades. There were no monuments to honor our sacrifice. Hundreds of thousands of American men and women left everything they had there on the battlefield, only to come home and find that we had lost the support of a nation, the same nation responsible for putting us in harm's way. Although we cannot rewrite history, we can make amends for such regrettable action. The dedication of the Vietnam Memorial in November of 1982 marked a turning point in our nation's attitude. Finally, veterans and their families of those killed and missing in Vietnam had a place where they could go to remember. There they saw that to remember was okay because the wall, where other people had shared the same journey and had understood the void left by the wall. At the wall, they were not alone, but instead joined with others who mustered up the courage to look into the polished, mirrored surface and search the names of the fallen, allowing themselves to be released from that griefs of sorrow. And of those Americans who had lost faith in their country during this volatile time in our history, the Vietnam Memorial stands as a reminder that the mission is not the man. In the fall of 1982, America discovered that somehow, within the black granite of the Vietnam Memorial, is the power to heal. This power to heal is so strong, in fact, that it must not be kept only in Washington, D.C., but for many, a visit to the Constitution Garden to see the Vietnam Memorial is not possible. Thus, we have the moving wall, as we have right here today. The moving wall that travels these United States for all to see, to feel, and to heal. This moving wall represents the respect Vietnam veterans should have received 40 years ago. For those of us who lived through the Vietnam War, it is a reminder that we must never forget. For those who didn't, this wall is here to teach the lessons of the past, so we never undervalue the sacrifices our military forces made for us in the name of God and country. The honor of this visit has been a long time in the making for Malden. We're so very grateful it is finally here. I encourage all of you to stay after the ceremony and allow yourselves to reflect and absorb the healing spirit this moving wall represents. Thank you very much. And at this time, let me present to you and introduce to others our Mayor, the Honorable Gary Christensen.
Good morning, everyone. And first, let me state that I know many of you may be wondering why we didn't reschedule the ceremony to last night or to Sunday afternoon, but our veterans didn't get to choose their weather, and so neither do we.
Here we go.
And let me also just use this opportunity to let you know about all the hard work that Kevin Jarvis is doing on behalf of the City of Malden. Here is a man that fought for his country and very easily could have rested on his service, yet he has been working around the clock to help our veterans. And as mayor, I am eternally grateful to you for everything you've done for Malden. So ever since the Vietnam Veterans Memorial was unveiled in Washington, D.C., it has been one of our nation's most moving tributes to those who sacrificed their lives in the Vietnam War. For the next 3 days, Malden is honored to be the home to a replica of that memorial. Although the memorial you see here today is not nearly the size of the original one, its message is just as powerful. The price of freedom is etched on that wall. There are more than 58,000 American patriots inscribed, including 18 from our own city. And those names offer a silent tribute to those who bravely answered the call of duty, fought for their country, and paid the ultimate price. There is no way to repay them, but by bringing this memorial to our community, we are given the opportunity to reflect and to admire the courage and sacrifice the wall symbolizes. It is also a time to express our gratitude and to say that Malden has not forgotten, and we will never forget these heroes and all of our veterans who stood ready to protect our freedoms and liberties. In closing, I want to share a story told by President Obama on Memorial Day in 2012 at a ceremony recognizing the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War. He told of a high school student who more than 2 decades after the Vietnam War visited Washington, D.C. And while at the memorial wall, he left his football helmet, a wristband, and a handwritten note. I think the message left by that young man captures the admiration and gratitude that brings us here today. The note starts, "Dear Vietnam veterans, here are 2 things from me to you that I think you should have." He goes on to explain that it was his football helmet and wristband, and then writes, "In these 2 pieces of equipment, I was allowed to make mistakes, correct them, grow, and mature as a person. However, that was on my battlefield. You didn't get the chance to do that on your battlefield. Some of you were forced to grow up too fast. All of you died too soon. We do have many things in common, though. We both have pride, heart, and determination. I'm just sorry you had to learn those qualities too fast. That is why I am giving you what I grew up with. You are true heroes, and you will never be forgotten." Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to make sure that everybody has a program for today's ceremony. But it's also a biography. We'll pass some out for those that need it. In the program, today's events is just 1 page. We have numerous other pages of stories and short biographies of all our men who died in Vietnam. And our men ranged in age from 18 to 45 years of age. I'm not going to read this because I'll never get through it. But you can read it. And we have some family members with us here today. So thank you for coming. I was going to have a wreath laying ceremony, but because of the rain, I put all the wreaths on this morning with the Boy Scouts. So we'll just cut that part out of the schedule. But feel free to take these home, show them to your family. I had some good information on some of the guys. Others didn't. There wasn't that much. I spent 6 hours in the library Saturday double checking, going through stories and obituaries. And I want to thank the Malden Public Library for helping me. Steve Nagel in particular. He did an awful lot of work pulling out the old microfilms of all the dates I needed, etc. So thank you very much to them. And there's actually a 19th Malden man who died in Vietnam. His father lived in Malden, he lived with his dad, his mother lived in Chelsea, she had been married, so on and so forth. But he is a Malden man and is now recognized as a veteran from Malden who died during the Vietnam War. His name was Everett Allen. And we have a wreath and a lawn sign. And just to let you know quickly, these lawn signs with the flag of the branch of the military they're in are exactly in front of a panel where the name is on the wall of these men. The bottom of the lawn signs will tell you it's panel, for instance, Thomas More right here in front of us, panel 13W, line 46. And if you look up there, you'll see the little white dots. Every white dot is like the 10th name to make it easy to get on the line 46. And then you're able to determine, and we have papers, which we won't be able to do today, where you can hold a piece of paper up to the name and use like a large black carpenter's crayon to sketch the name of your loved one, friend, or classmate, and then say it as a memento. It has to be dry to do that. So don't worry, we're going to have some dry weather Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, so come back and we can do that for you. At this time, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. In 2011, Catherine Clark was sworn in as Massachusetts State Senator representing Lynnfield, Malden, Melrose, Reading, Stoneham, and Wakefield. She was first elected to the legislature in March 2008 to represent Melrose and Wakefield in the Mass House of Representatives. She serves as the chair of the Joint Committee on Revenue and vice chair of the Joint Committee on Community Development and Small Business. She also serves on many other boards and committees to include education, public safety, homeland security, veterans and federal affairs, and Senate Committee on Post Audit and Oversight. Senator Clark is a member of the Advisory Council for the Department of Early Education and Care. In 2011, she was appointed to the Center for Women in Politics and Public Policy Advisory Board at the University of Massachusetts. Her professional career includes service as a prosecutor, school committee member, general counsel for the Massachusetts Office of Child Care Services, and the chief of the policy division for the Massachusetts Attorney General. She's a graduate of St. Lawrence University, Cornell University School of Law, and the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Senator Catherine Clark.
Thank you, Kevin, not only for that very gracious introduction, but for you and the work of Jim Nestor in bringing this incredibly poignant memorial to Malden. It is truly a privilege to be here, and I thank you also, Mayor Christensen, Councilman Neil Anderson, for your incredible words and your service, for your leadership around our veterans and those issues. And it is an honor to be here with so many veterans and with the Gold Star families that are with us today. As we remember the thousands of men and women, the 19 fallen heroes from Malden, but those men and women across the country, across the Commonwealth, who gave their lives so that we can enjoy the freedoms that we have today. And the Vietnam War was fought in some of the most horrendous conditions. In some ways, this weather is fitting because it was incredible heat, monsoons, and an enemy that was very elusive and would appear and disappear out of nowhere. But every major battle that was fought in Vietnam was won. And what we forget sometimes is how many of the people in Vietnam were volunteers who answered their country's call, and that we confused our politics with patriotism. That division has affected our veterans acutely, not just when they came home from Vietnam, but in the 50-plus years that have passed since. There were no parades. The medals, the stories, the pain were put away in another place. There was no understanding of post-traumatic stress syndrome. And today, even today, we see incredibly high rates of homelessness among our Vietnam veterans. Yet the service of the Vietnam veterans continued when they got home. Not only did they become our firefighters, our police officers, our teachers, community leaders, elected officials, and government leaders, but they also looked out for their other veterans. When the government turned their back, it was the Vietnam veterans who demanded that we change the way we provide veteran services in this country to provide for them. And so for those Vietnam veterans, we thank you for your service. The weight of the loss is acute, especially for you and for the families who are here today. And this beautiful replica of the Vietnam Memorial helps us to consider what it means to sacrifice and what it means to serve. It reminds us of our responsibility to veterans who are still with us and their families, something that these Vietnam veterans have fought for decades to protect and enhance. It means providing them and their families with the services, the benefits, and the support they need when they come home from war. Massachusetts leads the nation in that. I'm very proud to partner not only with my Representative Donato and Representative Fallon, but also with Kevin Jarvis and other local veteran service agents who serve us so well. But we can always do better. We cannot undo the history of the Vietnam War, but it is our responsibility to learn from it. This wall is a sacred place, and it reminds us of those lessons. 50 years later, it is still our responsibility to say thank you and welcome home. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this ceremony.
Catherine's also, she didn't mention it, but she worked with a friend of mine, Greg Matos, who just got commissioned in the Navy. But about, I think it was 7 years ago, Chris was a young Marine sergeant, like a lot of us, stationed in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. I think it was on a Sunday morning, when 5 Al-Qaeda members attacked the embassy and tried to break down the front door. Greg's now down in Virginia. But he's now a clinical psychologist with the Navy, and he's going to be helping our veterans. And for his service and sacrifice in defending that consulate, there were no American casualties. He got all the Americans into the, I guess you could say, the vault that they have inside the embassy that they use for storing documents. And there were 4 or 5 Saudi nationals killed that were working for us there, trying to protect the embassy. Greg was awarded the Bronze Star. I haven't seen him in a while. He's been down in D.C. for about a year, so I'm trying to get him up here. At this time, I'd like to introduce someone who was very instrumental in obtaining some funding for this wall to come to Malden. It's not cheap. It costs $5,000 just to bring it here. We also sponsor a hotel room for a few days for the husband and wife team. Aaron Gray, I don't know if he's here. I think he might be in the drug tour in Boston. He'll be around, and he'll be able to answer questions that I may not be able to answer. If he doesn't know the answer, he'll find the answer for you. They travel all over the country, and there were 2 stops in Massachusetts this year, Medway and Malden. It goes up to the, I think, the Brattleboro, Vermont area next week. And then the week after that, he's going upstate Maine. All over the country. He's been doing this for about 8 years, and he loves it. So, but it costs a lot of money. I mean, I've got T-shirts made up. They're going to be for sale afterwards, $10 each. And they're similar to the brochure, poster I did. But I want to thank Representatives Chris Fallon, Paul Donato, and Paul Brodeur, who initiated an amendment to help Malden receive funding, because this isn't just a Malden event, it's a state event. We have people from all over the state here, and have since last night. And they'll be coming from out of state as well to see their friends' names or relatives' names on the wall. Or maybe they didn't know anyone, but they just want to be here. Christopher Fallon, I sent him a letter requesting funding. Didn't know how much I was going to get. And he picked up the ball and ran with it. And I got together with Paul Donato and Paul Brodeur. And Catherine Clark got on board when it got to the House and to the Senate. And we'll be getting reimbursed in probably most, if not all, of our expenses. So thank you very much for all that. At this time, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Just barely fit under this tent. Peter Katujian was sworn in as the Middlesex Sheriff by Governor Deval Patrick. 20 or so years ago, Peter worked in Malden as Assistant District Attorney. And I didn't really get to know him, but I'm sure we talked, but we were just young government employees trying to get the job done. I was in Malden District Court quite often, on the good side of the table. And I want to thank the ADAs in Malden and throughout the state of Massachusetts, who helped me for almost 30 years in my old job. So thank you very much. Peter ran and won election as Sheriff of Middlesex County, representing 1.5 million residents. He won that election by 77%, or with 77% of the vote. So I guess you got everybody's vote that's in this tent. Upon becoming sheriff, Peter hit the ground running, utilizing his experience in the law and public sector to implement his vision for the Middlesex Sheriff's Office. And throughout that whole time, he hasn't forgotten Malden or many other communities. He's here all the time. And I can't believe he's always here whenever we need him, or he sends people over. And I want to thank you, Peter. And I know because of Gary Christensen's relationship with Peter that, I mean, anything we need, you can ask Jim Cahill and the cemetery staff. He's had some of his men out here who are soon to get released, getting back into society, and you know, they're productive members of society, and they're gradually getting released. But they're in here cutting grass and making the cemetery look as good as it is. We'll give Jim Cahill and his staff some credit too. Peter, your people.
Good morning, everyone. And I want to commend everyone under this tent and outside of this tent, and your mayor, Christensen, your Senator Catherine Clark, your representatives Donato and Fallon, your councilors, Councilor Anderson, beautiful speech. Councilor Nestor, thank you for your work on this. This is a very powerful day. It's a very powerful opportunity for a community. You see, my grandparents came to this country fleeing a genocide, which is termed as the attempt to eradicate an entire people, Christian Armenian people, 1.5 million people. My grandparents fled with nothing but the clothes on their back, and they barely escaped with their lives. And they saw on this trail of tears so many of the ones that they lost, neighbors, friends, family, on their way. And they saved a few on the way as well. My grandmother ended up working at an orphanage in Syria. My grandfather ended up here, and through the Red Cross International Family Finder Program, I think was the name for it, he was able to send for her, and she came here, and they began their lives. I don't know if they had a family back in Armenia, historic Armenia, because they didn't speak about the troubles of those days. But they came here, and they embraced this country, and they embraced everything about it. My grandmother couldn't even speak English. And yet they came here, and 3 of their sons, they had 4 children, a daughter and 3 sons, all of their sons served this country. All of their sons served. Michael Jack served in the Philippines. Michael Larson served in the Philippines and died while he was in the Philippines. He was only 19 years old. I don't know if, because there wasn't an active war, I don't know if my grandmother was technically a Gold Star mother, but she felt the pain just as any other mother would, and she didn't speak our language, and she loved this country. My Uncle Jack became the Veterans Services Director in Waltham for a number of years. And with my Uncle Jack, I'd attend many of these things as a child. I was indoctrinated into respect for those that have served as a child, and I say thank you very much to these Boy Scouts and all the other kids that are here, and to the parents that bring their kids and the grandparents that bring their children, because that's the best way to learn. When this moving wall was in Waltham, probably about 8 years ago, it was an amazing experience. And by the way, I'd ask you not just to come today, but to come as often as you can, because it is powerful. And every time you come, you feel something different, something new comes to you. And I remember going there, it was probably about 6 a.m. My son Peter was just 2 years old. It was a beautiful sunny day, and there was a large flag. It was just, it was a huge flag, and the wind was pushing it out. It was on full display. And I still remember this sweet moment in my life of my son, who was just learning to speak and kept pointing to it and saying it was a mama flag. It was a big flag. Now I want to assure you, my wife is not that big. I just run into her. But everything that was big was a mama flag, was the mother flag. And it's still this sweet moment of being 6 a.m. No one else was there. It was just us in this field at the Gore Estate with my son. Today's weather is very different, but quite honestly, I think in many ways so much more appropriate, and it doesn't make me feel hesitant or worried about being here, because this is really more appropriate in some ways. This wall is a potent reminder of the ultimate sacrifice made by tens of thousands of Americans from cities and towns just like Malden and Melrose and Medford, in my hometown of Waltham, who never came home to celebrate another christening, another 4th of July, another Christmas. You cannot help but be overcome with emotion when you see this wall and all these names for the very first time, when you realize that these are the heroes that walked the same streets, they sat in the same classrooms, and had the same life aspirations as you and I. The history of Malden and her citizens are as interwoven with the history of this country as any community, big or small, and sometimes in many ways more. It was, after all, Malden's residents who in May of 1776 were the first to provide the legislature with written support for independence. It's pretty powerful. 1776, Malden was the first group of people, community, to reach out to the legislature with written support for independence. They concluded their message by telling their representative to pass along the following to the Continental Congress. Quote, "And now we instruct you, sir, to give them the strongest assurance that, if they should declare America to be a free and independent republic, your constituents will support and defend the measure to the last drop of their blood." Powerful words. And for generations, those that were born here, those that have lived here, and those that have been buried here have proudly fought for the nation Maldonians supported creating. That includes the last Maldonian to be killed in the theater of war, Marine Lance Corporal Edward Garvin, a member of the 2nd Light Armored Reconnaissance Battalion. He was killed in Anbar Province in Iraq in October of 2006. It also includes men that we are gathered here to remember today, all 19 of them. Men recognized on this wall behind me like PFC John Muse, who was posthumously presented the Navy Cross, the 2nd highest decoration for valor that can be awarded to a Marine. And I know that I'm not the first one that finds this entirely fitting that the moving wall, as it is here in Malden today, because it was 44 years ago, this very week, that 2 sons of Malden were killed in Vietnam that were remembered on this wall. 2 sons of Malden, 44 years ago this week. PFC Kevin Crow and First Lieutenant Anthony Sestito were a couple of boys from Edgeworth, right here, killed on the same day, June 5th, 1969, thousands of miles from here, their hometown, but miles from each other in different parts of Vietnam. PFC Crow was killed in an especially devastating act. He was recovering the body of a fallen comrade whose body had been booby-trapped by the enemy. These were young men. I think he was 21 at the time. Lieutenant Sestito was 26 at the time and had just mailed in an application for law school as well. They lived just streets apart. Crow on Russell Street and Sestito on Medford Street, and today they rest together just feet from one another in this cemetery, and yet their names are remembered just inches apart on this very wall. And we must never forget the service of all those who fought and died in defense of this great nation and the ideals we hold so dear, like PFC Muse, PFC Crow, and Lieutenant Sestito. I pray that this will be the impetus for us to say thank you to those men and women who did return home, but were never given the proper thanks at the time. They will never ask for it. You will never ask for it, but you deserve it. And lastly, I'd like to, one last mention. Just sitting here reminded me that my predecessor, Jimmy DePaolo, would have loved to have been here today. He loved these types of events. He loved his great city of Malden. He loved his honor guard, and he loved the work that this Middlesex Sheriff's Office did on behalf of his great city. And I just wanted to mention his name because, you know, sometimes we forget those that have passed before us. And during days like this, where Jimmy would have loved to have been here, wholeheartedly in support of those that have passed and those that have survived Vietnam, and to say thank you as well. Thank you very much.
Jimmy DePaul is buried in a cemetery. He's an Air Force veteran, and we have a flag in his grave. We put 10,000 flags down in Malden cemeteries, mostly here in Forestdale and Holy Cross Cemetery. If you go back a little further, I actually worked for a former sheriff named Howard Fitzpatrick. That's how old I am. I was about 12 years old working at Fitzpatrick Brother Caterers, lugging dishes around and washing them after the banquets. Anyway, so Howard Fitzpatrick is a U.S. Marine Sergeant. He's buried in Holy Cross Cemetery, and he has a flag in his grave as well. Also, we didn't forget Ed Garvin or Michael Geary, who was killed in Afghanistan. I set up lawn signs and wreaths for both of them. Ed Garvin's at the left end, guarding the wall down there, and Mike Geary's at the right end, guarding the other end of the wall. Of course, you need Marines guarding things, so. They're both Lance Corporals in the Marine Corps, and they were killed in combat. At this time, I'd like to introduce a man who is always behind veterans. He's always at the veterans events. He's a big supporter of veterans. And he's also a Vietnam warrior, a veteran who served in the U.S. Naval Reserve. Ladies and gentlemen, Representative Christopher Fallon.
I'm going to be brief for a couple of reasons. Number one, I've learned over the years that it is not smart for a politician to speak long while police officers are standing in the rain. The second reason will become evident in a moment. Kevin, your predecessors, John Webster, Paul Kuhn, you all have served this city as a veteran service officer with distinction, with integrity, and with compassion. Kevin, thank you for what you do, what your predecessors have done, day in and day out. Thank you, Kevin. Very briefly, Representative Donato, Councilor Anderson, and I have a slightly unique perspective about this type of service, about the moving wall. Paul grew up in Medford during the Vietnam War. I grew up in Malden with Neil, and we came out of high school, right in the middle of the Vietnam era. I would have been drafted because they instituted the lottery back in the 60s, but because the birth date that I had drew a number of 250, 255, I was able to go on and finish my college career, my educational career, before entering the Naval Service. I say that because the three of us grew up knowing many of the 19 people whose names are on this wall. I remember the day when I first heard that John Wayden was killed in Vietnam. I remember the day when I first heard that Kevin Crowe was killed in Vietnam. Paul, Neil, and I knew these people personally. The tragedy will never be fully defined. Ladies and gentlemen, we understand, you all understand, whether you knew any of these people personally or not, what this wall means. Certainly for the city of Malden, to be able to have this wall physically in our city is certainly a compliment to the mayor, to Councilor Nestor, to all our city councilors, indicating their commitment to our veterans, to the memory of every name on that wall, but also to the people that came back, to continue to serve our community. But it's more profound on a statewide, on a national basis, because that wall symbolizes our country, and our country's endurance, and our country's commitment to help people who need help when it comes to persevering freedom, protecting freedom, not only in our own country, but in Southeast Asia, in Africa, in every other continent on this planet. That's what America is for. That's what these names symbolize. It's America. It's Malden, certainly, but it's America. It's all of us in our commitment to freedom and to make sure that people can live with due respect. We, Representative Donato, myself, Senator Clark, will remain committed to those that came home. We will remain committed to make sure that they receive the services that they deserve for putting their lives on the line, for potentially making that ultimate sacrifice. We will make sure that the mental health services are fully funded, that the housing services are fully funded. We will never forget our veterans, and of course today, we'll never forget those that indeed made the ultimate sacrifice. To all of you, thank you for coming out here. God bless America. God bless America.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to know, one of the reasons that we have the Vietnam moving wall here in Forest Hill Cemeteries, of the 19 men that died in Vietnam from Malden, 11 of them are buried in the cemetery. 6 of them right near the pond, 4 of them just south of the pond, 1 right in the corner, Peter Sullivan. 2 of them are buried at Holy Cross, and others at different cemeteries, including one in Arlington National Cemetery. And I just want you to know that. You can read the bios, and I'm going to have lawn signs throughout this cemetery on the graves of the 11 men that are buried here, similar to the ones we have in front of me today. I have a couple of men in the audience I'd like to introduce. They're my counterparts, Joe Hickey and Everett. Combat veterans of Vietnam. 2 boys. And as we all know, Vietnam was like the first helicopter war. He was in a helicopter every day. Also, Nick Bua, Revere, U.S. Air Force veteran. Both of these men were already on the job when I started, and we don't really come with the rule book. We have the Mass General laws, but you know how that works. You have the law, rules, and regulations, and then you have to learn how to really get things done. Legally. Another man here, I'll be introducing shortly, has been a mentor of mine also for many years. So at this time, before we get to our guest speaker, I'd like to introduce Malden High School student Corey Malone, who's going to sing a song called Without You.
Step by step of where we are today because of what happened in Vietnam. For everybody else, if history isn't a big deal to you, or past politics and things isn't a big deal, this is what counts. You live in Malden, you live in some other city or town in the country, you have X number of people that are sitting on that wall. And that's the bottom line. And that message has gotten through.
sure you just put a smile on those 19 men up there. Nice job. And I wanted to include the Malden High students, buglers, a few band members, and Corey, because they're all closer in age than any of us, or most of us, to these young men. They were young men when they died in Vietnam, except for Master Sergeant Raymond Gignac. He was a veteran of World War II, Normandy, Battle of the Bulge, Korea, where he was awarded the Silver Star, in Vietnam, where he died in January 1968 during the terror incident. His daughter's here with us today. I met her a couple of weeks ago. At this time, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker. And I call him a friend because he's the nicest guy in the world. When I first met him, I didn't know that much about him. I knew he worked at the JFK building, but he was a state liaison to the Veteran Service, to the VA and federal agencies. But he worked for the State Department of Veteran Services. He's been my mentor, and I bugged him almost every other day by phone or email. Because it's a little difficult sometimes to sort through the VA paperwork, claims, and find out what's going on. If there's already a claim on file, accept it. Our next guest speaker, his name is Timothy B. Sullivan. He's a retired U.S. Navy Lieutenant Commander. He was commissioned as a naval officer in the middle of the Vietnam War. I won't go through the whole bio I have here. It's a couple of pages long. But I will let you know that Tim spent almost 6 years as a prisoner of war. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, please welcome Tim Sullivan.
Kevin for inviting me to come here and speak today. This is one of those things that just sort of naturally developed out of what happened to me. First and foremost, I was just like everybody else when this thing started. I was in college, going to Holy Cross, going to the ROTC program, graduated in '65, and that's about the time everything got going. So, found the Pensacola, I went and learned how to hang out in the backseat of airplanes, and bad things happened, good things happened, and you get shut down. So that's the real short story of what happened to us. I'll try to get into more detail later. I'd also like to thank everybody here that got involved with bringing this monument, this moving wall, to the city of Malden. I know it's a very big endeavor to get everything together. It's almost like herding cats. There's all kinds of moving parts, and it just takes a lot of effort. And for everybody that's on the committee, everybody that got the funding for it, thank you very much. This moving wall and the wall in Washington are the things that kind of symbolize what happened in Vietnam. Everybody says no Vietnam vets got parades when they came home. We were perhaps the one group of Vietnam vets that actually got a parade. People looked at us when we got off those airplanes in 1973 as like, this is the end of the Vietnam War. And that was the idea that a lot of people had. Because of the work of the POW MIA group, a lot of people wore bracelets. They had names of different people that were missing, different people were captured. I had one of those bracelets. Anybody that wore mine or anybody else says thank you very much, that definitely improved our life while we were sitting there in Vietnam. The Vietnamese couldn't believe that people cared. When President Nixon decided to reintroduce bombing to try to get us out of there back in the, I guess it was like '71, some of the people that got shot down on the second round also had bracelets. They're wearing some of ours. Kind of a unique experience to meet some. You got your bracelet here. Only in Vietnam can something like that happen. It is just one of the most messed up situations that you'll ever see. The beauty of the wall in DC and this wall here is that this puts a personal face on what happened in Vietnam. Of the 58,000 or so that are on that wall, you can go around to every state in the country, almost every city or town in the country, and somebody is on that wall from that city or town. So that gives people that are in a teaching profession the ability to go, okay, let's try to explain what happened in Vietnam. It was a unique experience. What can we do? What can we do? And when it's all over and done with, this is what it comes down to. We put so many people over there for so long, lost so many people, trying to figure out what, when, where, why, how, and the politics of it, the Cold War side of it. It's all just a whirling dervish that you can sort of make it fit in a timeline, but realistically, this is all that really counts. We spent that much time, lost that many lives, spent that much money for whatever happened. And then it's up to historians and people like that to try to give you a step-by-step of where we are today because of what happened in Vietnam. For everybody else, if history isn't a big deal to you, or past politics and things isn't a big deal, this is what counts. You live in Malden, you live in some other city or town in the country, you have X number of people that are sitting on that wall. And that's the bottom line. And that message has gotten through. Since it ever went up in 1982, it's like the most visited, they call it a museum, but it's the most visited site in Washington, D.C. And the reason people go is because you're from Hometown, USA. And Hometown, USA has somebody on that wall. And the more you get into it, now it's pretty easy with the stuff on the internet and things like that. You can find a lot of information. And you can put a perspective on what happened, why it happened, how it happened. And it was a long time ago, that's for sure. But it still counts today. A couple of weeks ago, we had a reunion, 40 years after getting released from Vietnam. Had it in California, and the Nixon Library was the one that was kind of the main sponsor behind it. They were just kind of replicate some of the stuff that happened in '73, when everything was over and done with. Or at least that's what they thought. Everything was over and done with. And to a point it was. But it never really ended. That's the sad part. The wall in D.C. and this one here helped put closure on a lot of it. But we're still looking for MIAs out of Vietnam. Still looking for answers of what happened to some people. So this wall gives a measure of closure. It's probably the simplest way I can put it. It allows you to look, allows you to see, allows you to recognize people, recognize sacrifice, realize that a lot of people were there making the sacrifice. A lot of people came back. A lot of people didn't. But it sort of puts it all into perspective. When it's all over and done with, that's what counts. Those people and the ones that were still missing. So, well, thank you for coming. Encourage you to get as much out of this as you can. Look at it, understand it, explain it to somebody if they don't understand what you're looking at. It's a great teaching tool when it comes to the high school kids. Again, it puts it in perspective. We got 19 people that graduated from schools in Malden that are on there. And this is what happened, what, when, where, why, now. Again, thank you, Kevin, for inviting me, and that's all I got.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just recently watched, well, I don't know, probably the 4th or 5th time, a documentary about the Hanoi Hilton. I recommend you all watch it to see what our men went through, including Tim Sullivan. I'd just like to say a couple more words. Today's the opening ceremony of the moving wall. And as a third-generation Malden veteran, I'm proud to claim the title of the U.S. Marine Corps era veteran, a Vietnam era veteran. My father's buried here, World War II. My grandfather's buried on the other side of the pond, World War I veteran. But like many of you, our fathers, grandfathers, brothers, sisters, mothers served in the military, and I also have a cousin buried near the pond who fought in Vietnam and died a couple years later. A different kind of tragedy. I want to thank our modern day warriors, our men and women, some here today that have fought in Iraq and are now fighting in Afghanistan, have been there and may go back because they have to do 2, 3, 4 tours of duty. I just want to thank them, thank all of you in the Malden Police, Malden Fire Department. The brochure you have today in front of you, there's no way I can read these. I won't be able to make it through, but please read it and always remember these men. As mentioned before, we have PFC Kevin Crow, U.S. Army, died June 5th, 1969. Master Sergeant Raymond Gignac, Gignac it's spelled. My wife says it's Gignac in French. She ought to know. And he died on January 19, 1968, just 18 days after getting to Vietnam. Lance Corporal David Gregoire, U.S. Marine Corps, died on March 20, 1968. And Kevin Crow and Raymond Gignac are buried near the pond, David Gregoire's Holy Cross Cemetery. We also have Specialist 4 Kevin Hamilton, U.S. Army, died on July 1968. You really got to read his bio. He was transporting a USO group, a singer named Peggy Levine, actress in Hollywood. She had 4 or 5 band members with her, so they asked for a volunteer to drive the truck from one base to another. Of course, through a combat zone. They didn't make it. They were hit by snipers, and David was laying mortally wounded from multiple gunshot wounds. He laid on top of the actress and said, "Just play dead, you'll survive." She did. He didn't. She survived. Major William Hurley, U.S. Army, died March 29, 1968, buried right over near Anthony Sestito, Kevin Crow, and Paul Traynor. So if you come down the row about 5 graves from Anthony Sestito, you'll see Major Hurley's gravestone. PFC John Muse, I'm not going to try his. I had to leave off so much on him. He was a Navy Cross recipient. He and Peter Sullivan joined the Marine Corps together after graduating Malden Vocational High School. So almost all our guys are Malden Catholic graduates, Malden High graduates, or Malden Vocational High School graduates. And most of them are stellar athletes and just tremendous guys. I mean, it's amazing when I'm reading this. I feel like I know them all. You have to read John Muse's citation. He wouldn't leave the battlefield while he was wounded. He was a radio man, and he knew they needed him. and he directed gunfire through his commanding officer and reinforcements, and by giving the positions of the enemy, his commanding officer was able to flank the enemy, overtake them, kill them, and retake the position around noontime on that day. John Muse was found dead, radio set in one hand, pistol in the other, 5 dead, VC in front of him. A real hero. Not to say they're not all real heroes, but some of these guys committed heroic acts, but the witnesses died with them in battle, so they'll never know. Lance Corporal Thomas Moore, U.S. Marine Corps, died on February 22nd, 1970 in Da Nang. Captain Thomas Morris, U.S. Army, died on June 25th, 1968. Captain Charles Robertson, U.S. Air Force, died on January 9th, 1967. He was a West Point graduate, did 1 year at MIT while he was waiting to get appointed to West Point. When he was in Vietnam, he was a pilot of an AC-47, known as Puff the Magic Dragon. That plane could put thousands of rounds into an enemy position in a matter of minutes. A lot of you will remember that. PFC Samuel Rumson, he was only 19 when he died. He died on March 8, 1968. He wrote a poem back to his parents. It was published in the Malden News. I'll get it out to everybody that wants a copy. And again, I'm going to be here for 3 or 4 days, so there's no way I can get through that either. Published in the Malden News, and then 3 or 4 days later, his family got a call that he was killed in combat. First Lieutenant Anthony Sestito died the same day as Kevin Crowe, June 5th, 1969, in Binh Dinh, Vietnam. He was a 1961 graduate of Malden High School, quarterback. You know, everyone tells me he was a great guy. I mean, I grew up in Malden in the 60s, but I was younger than these guys. But I remember their names, but I didn't know them. I certainly know them now. I bet my dad went to every funeral. Specialist 4th Class William J. Shortsleeves, U.S. Army, died on March 25th, 1968. John Muse's friend, PFC Peter Sullivan, U.S. Marine Corps, died on February 8, 1967. John died about 8 weeks later. John sent a check back from Malden High School when Peter died to the Peter Sullivan Scholarship Foundation. They each told each other if they don't come home, that the one that survived would go to the grave and fire a rifle volley salute to the other. PFC Paul Trainer, U.S. Marine Corps, died on August 2nd, 1968. And last, PFC John Whedon, U.S. Army, died on November 21st, 1966 in Vietnam. Ladies and gentlemen, we also have First Lieutenant Rodney Alfano, U.S. Army, died February 2nd, 1968. Seaman Everett Allen, U.S. Navy, died July 29th, 1967. Now, Seaman Allen was 28 years old, so I'm thinking, he's only a seaman? What the heck did he do wrong? He did nothing wrong. Joined the National Guard in 1959, served a year. The Massachusetts National Guard. In 1960, joined the United States Marine Corps, served 6 years. He was discharged in 1966. He was out a few months, and I guess he was a little bored, so he decided to join the United States Navy just a few months after getting out of the Marine Corps. So he didn't do anything wrong. He did everything right. But sadly, he was while serving on the aircraft carrier USS Forrestal in a place called the Gulf of Tonkin, where the war basically started. It's just off the coast of North Vietnam. Everett died as a result of a horrendous explosion and fire aboard that aircraft carrier. And you've probably all seen the video and news reports. He and 134 other sailors died that day due to an accident, a mishap on the U.S. aircraft carrier. Specialist 4th Class Jacob Babin, U.S. Army, died on March 26, 1971, buried right up near the pond. There's 6 of our men right near the pond. And Staff Sergeant Edwin Castelletto, U.S. Army, Died on May 29th, 1967 in Vietnam. He was a military police officer. Just like I believe his nephew is in the honor guard today with the Malden Police Department. Please read these bios. You're getting there. Again, I just want to thank all of you for coming. Nobody needs to read about the history of Vietnam. I've got 3 pages of it. You can all do that online. Malden has a very large Vietnamese population, and a lot of those people served in the older ones, my age and older, I guess I can call them, served in the Army in South Vietnam as our allies during the war. The other day, the mayor and I met a young man, a Marine. His last name didn't sound Vietnamese to me. He came in, we took a picture, just got out of boot camp, super squared away. You'll see it on the City Hall website. His father started talking. I said, "Where are you from?" "I'm from Vietnam." I said, "Oh, what part?" He said, "Saigon." I said, "When did you get to the United States?" He goes, "I fled Vietnam in 1979. His son's in the Marine Corps. Proud member of the U.S. Marine Corps. Just like a lot of the Vietnamese that came here, they served in our military. They served in the military when they got here. Some of them became helicopter pilots, Persian Gulf War, stuff like that. So very proud people. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have some band members going to play a short tune from Malden High School. They're going to play the theme of the mini-series The Pacific, since most of our men, all our 19 men, died after transiting the Pacific to Vietnam. So at this time, we're going to have the Malden High Band play The Pacific. Seen it. That theme was from the Pacific version of the Band of Brothers, 10-part mini-series about the war in the Pacific during World War II. And did a great job. Ladies and gentlemen, Just 2 or 3 statistics about Vietnam and the wall. The first man killed in Vietnam was from Stoner, Massachusetts. His last name was Fitzgibbon. 11 years later, his son was fighting in Vietnam as a U.S. Marine. He was also killed. The last man killed, or one of the last 2 men, because they died at the same time, they were members of my battalion in Saigon. They died on April 29, 1979. Charles McMahon from Woburn and Darwin Judge from Washington, Idaho. There's a Malden man who served with them in Saigon. He's a Medford police officer, resident of Malden. He was on the last helicopter off the embassy roof on April 30th, 1975 with a good friend of mine, John Valdez. John had been in my company and became my company gunnery sergeant when we came back from Saigon a few weeks later. And John Delane is a real hero, but he's a real quiet guy. So I just want to mention him. At this time, we have a bagpiper with us, Tom Loftus, who's going to play Amazing Grace. Tom, take it away, man. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we have the Middlesex County Sheriff's Honor Guard, who's going to play they're going to shoot a rifle volley in honor of all the men and women from Malden and the United States who died in Vietnam.
Party! Hand by 3 volleys! Hey! Hey! Fire! Hey! Hey! Fire! Hey! Hey! Fire! Freeze! Jack! Huh!
Thank you. Please rise, render the appropriate salute, whether in uniform or in civilian clothes, for the playing of taps, in honor of all our American fallen heroes, both past and present. Taps will be performed by Malden High School students Karen Mulligan and Anthony Torres. The buglers are standing today at each end of the moving wall. Buglers. Good job, kids. Young men and women, I should say. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time I'd like to thank you for coming out today and remembering our Vietnam veterans. On behalf of all those men and women that paid the ultimate sacrifice, I thank you for remembering them today and for honoring their lives. Like I said before, I posted 2 of our young Marines lost in Iraq and Afghanistan to guard each end of the wall. Because as you all know, when the Army, Navy, Coast Guard, and Air Force have a look at heaven scenes, you will see the streets are guarded by United States Marines. Thank you very much.
Francis.